Welcome back to Combust Astrology. My name's Liv. We're going to be covering Aries rising. It's been a while, but I'm here. So first and foremost, if you are someone with an Aries rising, congrats on winning. I don't know if it's the astrology lottery, but you are the archetype, I guess you could say. Aries being the first sign, and you having an Aries rising, you are the archetype for that reason. Currently, we're looking at how it is that Uranus affects you, but I think it's important to consider for you guys Saturn and Neptune quite a bit, because Saturn and Neptune both being in Aries, they are encompassed with a desire, and they each have a direct sextile, me trying to draw a sextile horizontally, to Aquarius, which is air, and Pluto being there, and then another sextile to Uranus, which is also air, and Uranus being in Gemini. So during the upcoming year, and for a little bit, they're going to be within orb, and I think for you guys, this is something you will feel, right? We're talking about Uranus, but keep in mind that a lot of your Uranus-related influence is going to be affected by Aries because of the drive. Now, this is for everyone, without a doubt. But because Saturn and Neptune are going to sit in your first, and this is how people perceive you, and, people come through the seventh to see your face in the first, that's a lot. It's a lot of burden of responsibility. And for you guys, for the ones that I've done readings for, I've been saying to just sit in your 12th house and really try to appreciate the North Node being there, because it does want you to be to yourself. It's kind of like there's a there's a war outside, and you're inside the general tent, and you're still planning out what's happening. You're very aware real time blood is being shed, but you're trying to make do with what you can, right? That's how this energy kind of feels. But when we now hone in and consider how Uranus specifically relates to this, the context of that kind of drives away just from the war, and I feel like it focuses on the idea of where it is that needs a sense of speed. So Uranus, as we might know, is change, it's rebellion, it's innovation, it's revolution. But with the Gemini, it's like a dual aspect of both sides. And in the third, this can be something that can throw people off, because as Uranus has stepped into here, it's like you're a person that you were XYZ about stuff, and now Uranus is coming in and saying no longer, right? So it's changing drastically. And not only is it just changing drastically, but you're trying to still be probably kind, especially if you have more air placements than anything. You're probably keeping it very cordial. If you have earth, you're probably keeping it cordial. But the request that this third house Uranus is asking you would be more so like following the eighth house desires of your chart, which would be more towards you, more towards how you feel comfortable, more towards your fantasy. Which, if it's something that you don't actually do naturally, can feel uncomfortable. But Uranus wants that change in how you think. And I feel like compared to Sagittarius, which is like an arrow and it's shooting through the air and it's going towards a specific target, right? There's like a bullseye and all that. Uranus is kind of just like knee-jerk reactions to something. I've experienced this firsthand. I've had friendships with this, and I watch them and study them. They do change drastically overnight in a way that I don't think any other sign in the zodiac can. But it's all out of experimentation. So with this, I think that all the air signs are human, and so they can exhibit human traits of changing the way they want. I think Libra is afraid to encompass that. Aquarius might desire to just be straight up different. But Gemini doesn't know sometimes how to actually encompass that in of itself. It can be a little bit more selfish and indulgent than Libra is, but Libra might not be able to actually say it, right? Which means if you have this, just be mindful for yourself that the rate at which you change is broadcasted. But at the same time, you are allowed to express what you need to for yourself. So this transit is so much more personal to you and more, some people could say selfish, but I think it's like what's going on in your soul's journey and desire. But make sure that you don't put too much of a burden on yourself that isn't your responsibility. Because the downside of being that general when these two are in Aries and they sextile this is like feeling like you have to save everyone and you might not give yourself the chance, right? Is it truly your responsibility every single time? Probably not. It's probably not something you constantly have to do and you have to feel like you have to and all of that. I don't want to push upon that idea that you can't express yourself, but it doesn't have to be that way. So the other factor of this transit, besides just Uranus of itself, is what are we looking at with the energy of Mercury? And I'm covering Mercury as a side note here because of your rising sign. Uranus being the obvious proponent of the change, like I said. But Mercury is so much more about how quickly we can go from A to B. So if Mercury is going to come in here and be addressed, it would want to go from X and Y and then complete change. And that's where I drew that like maze or just jolts, right? This is you and you're going and it's like changing and it's changing and it's changing. Without considering your own Mercury, the sixth house and the third house here are at a direct square in the mutable axis of your chart. And your Aries rising wants you to commit to something long term. Your sixth house in Virgo wants you to not make everything mundane and actually enjoy what you want. And then when we come back to how this affects the third, it's accumulation of saying, hey, your mind is going to be restless and there will be a lot of things that you change for. And that's okay. But it could also be something that's a lot. And as I look at the other placements that will be transiting during the time, Jupiter will go into the fifth house. And then as Pluto's moving through the 11th, just make sure that every idea doesn't feel like it has to be entertained. I think that's the biggest thing, because especially as Jupiter enters here and then it opposes your 11th house, like every idea doesn't have to be something you do. And then if you also have Sag placements or when it trines the Aries stuff, be mindful, because what will be at the back end of that is going to be Uranus and also, oops, that's not coloring. Uranus and also the North Node will be the shadow of what's creating a lot of this stuff up front, That's really it for you guys. It's not too long of a video because your transit is very straightforward. And also, it can't really be fully seen. I didn't try to guess too much of what the transits will do in Uranus because Uranus that's what it does. Like, it wants to be the rebel, right? But in the third, it does so many different things, whether it's just writing, whether it's communications, whether it's like, maybe setting up protest, maybe revolting, whatever that could be for you. It definitely, out of all the places, it definitely does not want to be told its range. So I wasn't trying to focus on that. I more so wanted to heed precaution and warning. But that's it. Enjoy this revolutionary energy in your chart. Hopefully it gives you bright new ideas and it either helps you assist the collective or probably give you your own sense of gain for your identity.